Now I want to talk about the devil's rules again and how it sneaks in. It sneaks in after it's created chaos and fear. You can recruit better, right? And we've got all that. So more likely we can get these outcomes, as the Bible would mention, as history mentions, and what we've learnt, right, about outcomes, circumstances, our freedom of choice, our life, what we fight for, and all that kind of thing. And so with this story, I want to put out a theory of what can happen. And it can relate to the one just before it too, with someone burning an old lady. And it's like a recruitment thing. And it can be individually done. And people will do moves as they're being recruited with the devil, thoughts of way of thinking. And little groups will do it, not even knowing the other group, because they're eating the bad apple, right? The thoughts, the way of what they believe is their outcome of their choice in the moment, right? And sometimes their friends around them have been doing it and all that kind of stuff. It's why they would come up with a decision. Definitely if there's a system that can't help them, right? Nowhere to really go that really can protect you or fix you. And so what you'll get is perhaps this story here. I'm going to play this one. I want to talk about it.
Tonight, the suspect charged with murdering a young Ukrainian refugee on a commuter train in North Carolina is behind bars. What the suspect is saying about the attack. And tonight, President Trump now calling for the death penalty. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos.
Now, with this story here, here goes Angel again. They're talking about mental issues and all these things and getting kicked out and all that kind of stuff. And so when it comes to knowledge and what people do, there's an outcome. You've got to think of the outcomes, or there's a circumstances outcome that can naturally happen, but then there could be a planned outcome. And so when you think about, is there a natural outcome? Is there a planned outcome? Is there both? Which one's more likely the truth? You've got to go research a little bit more about what outcome is naturally happening. Are they broke? Are they joining a cult? Someone paying them to do it because they're broke, right? Have they been doing it more often? And so on. That's why we do investigations. But with this one, won't put out the positive. I'll put out the negative on this one. Usually I do a positive and stuff like that. There's different ways of choosing. As paths go, it's like you're rocking up to a doorways, say 3 doors. And each door is the truth of what could be, right? And you've got to pick which one's right. And the best way to do that is to think of the knowledge you've got. Because if you pick one, it'll be, right? And you can not do your job right. You can just force someone else, all these kind of things. It's like picking a door, right? And that's what people do when they do a lot of actions. So when it comes to this one, I'm going to tell you about a door, and if that was the door they picked, right, instead of picking a different door. And so I'm going to play this again.
Tonight, the man seen on this train attacking Irina Zarutska, the young woman who moved to the U.S. from Ukraine.
I won't show you the clip, but you can watch it yourself. You should know about it. And at these points, you can look at what I'm talking about.
To escape war back home is facing federal murder charges.
Now, right up to this point, as they paused him going to stab this young lady, they talked about stuff. So they're talking about mental issues now where he's captured, and they talk about, his parents are talking about that he's had previous mental issues. He did a phone call just before it and things like that. So if it's natural, it could be an outcome, but it could also be a planned outcome, right? Because when you get things planned, you get too much of coincidences. Because natural, you don't have too much, oh yeah, that's it, so you can easily solve it. It's usually not, right? Unless you're really smart, right? And sometimes that can happen. But if they expect you to be to the norm, then you can have people play out things, which I'll tell you about a scenario of what could happen, of what my first thoughts of a scenario without knowing too much knowledge. This is an investigation. We have badges for that and all that kind of stuff to help us get this. Because it could be different scenarios. I've come up with a couple, right? But I'm going to give you one. Of what I believe that happened here. Actually, I'll give you two. I'll give you the one I believe that I want to give you, and the planned outcome. So with a planned outcome, you could have someone that's broke, a parent. You can have someone with mental issues. They're the best ways to manipulate someone. So then you can cut them off the medication with the system, and then the actions they do, they'll end up getting in trouble and going back to how they got on the medication, as they probably found they got a mental issue and they should have been on the medication. And so there's a sort of loophole in some areas, depends on where you go to court, where the lawyer would say that, and then he just goes back to hospital for a little bit, gets some medication, and he gets away with it, right? And before this happened, there's bets in the world. I'll just chuck out a couple of scenarios. This parent could make a bet to a rich dude, to anybody, or wants an outcome, or allows their child to succeed an outcome. You can give them education, the bad apples, all sorts of things, and take them off the medication, kick them out, and they end up going out and doing something stupid, and then they'll get away with it, and they know that, right? So they can fulfill a fantasy, they can make a profit on a bet, see so many outcomes on that area, and go do the actions and then get away with it, as the system has areas where it doesn't satisfy, right? Because what I believe how he gets away with it there is the parent or the person who's meant to have responsible. When someone's on such medication, there's always meant to be someone's responsible for them to make sure they have that medication, right? Otherwise, you can have failures not taking the medication. And so that parent shouldn't have kicked him out, shouldn't have took him off medication, and have actually caused an outcome. And so I'll talk about how certain people cause problems in areas and they get away with it that hurt people, right? And so what they do is she's done a similar thing where they've put them out, or he put them out into that circumstances, and something happened, knowing that it's more likely going to happen, right? Or something bad's going to happen. Definitely if they do a phone call out, you'd want to call straight away. If I was in their shoes, even trying to do the right thing, that if someone's out there with a that's thinking crazy thoughts and can possibly do it, right? And I've kicked them out, and they're meant to be on medication, which is not good as a parent. Definitely if it's a parent, or a guardian of some sort. They've failed their job. And so whatever outcome that person does, like letting out your bad dog, right, you're reliable with that action. But then there's loopholes where it's not, and all this kind of stuff. So you got to watch that. But when it comes to those circumstances, they should. So that guy's not technically dangerous if that's true. He's on medication, but he'd certainly be dangerous if he was off medication. Now, you can even make that circumstances to fulfill a fantasy and make bets and do hit jobs and pretend you're on medication. Depends on how far you go back to research if it was true or not, and how long they've been on it and all that kind of stuff. It can go on and on and on and on. And so I want to talk about, and so we've got all that part, right? And now we've got the incident, right? And when it comes to the incident, people are crazy. They will do certain things. There'll be no thought. They'll be naturally doing something stupid, and then you'll see it coming. They'll pull out a knife usually, and they'll talk about. They don't usually think about things too much, where you could say that they're thinking about not doing it, but they've got to do it kind of thing. So I just want to explain. Let's get back in here for a second about. When he goes to stab,
is facing federal murder charges.
See, when he went to go stab there, he looks, and then he goes, oh, kind of thing. Get it? Yeah. Oh, means he's pulling a thought that he didn't want to do it. Say the bet was the first person you see, right? You got to take him out that sits next to you. That was the bet. And then you see someone that you don't want to kill. What action would you do? Would you do that look? You would, wouldn't you? Not saying it is. As I said, there's many ways, but you'd go, oh. Right? And that means they're not crazy. That means they can think, they understand what's going on. Right? Crazies don't do that. Usually a particular action like that beforehand. Usually someone will just walk in and they'll do it. Right? But crazy usually doesn't want to, that's what I'm trying to say. But the other outcome, it does, doesn't it? And that's why you've got to check up things because it could be many, many, many things. But the further back you go, the more you can find out some answers, and then you can go, it wasn't that, right? But yeah, could even be a hit job, right? And how do you get a hit job with an outcome where you can get $1 million over here, you get put rid of that person there, right? And people have lots of money. Some people might even go, she's not even worth $1 million, but you don't know to a rich man who's got billions, right? Or anything like that. Maybe even said something bad to him at one point. Looked at him funny. People kill for that, right? So there's any scenario, but he goes to do that part, right? When he goes to stab, I believe there was a thought there. And what was it? The questions I would ask him, right, when it comes to this action. As suspiciously, I believe, what I know, I'm not a professional, I'm not a badger, that could be crazy. They might say, well, crazy do that. I'm not 100% on that, right? But I speak of what I believe, the knowledge I've got, and so I'm saying chat about it. And it might even get a comment. Who knows? Am I right or wrong?
Is facing federal murder charges.
They might even do it so the mother gets famous in talking about things and stuff like that. There's many ways of why people do things, right? He might be killing it because he's crazy. So let's go back to the positive now. He is crazy, right? So we get out of the other scenarios of deliberately doing it and plan. And he is crazy, and he actually could probably maybe, I'm just trying to think of how he can get that look. He is crazy, and he sits down in there and he's losing the plot about his mother. So when you get angry about people, you want to put that energy out onto others, right? And so he comes in, he sits down, and so in this scenario, if that's true, the mother could still get into trouble because someone usually has to get into trouble with a crazy person too, or the system does, right? They can blame the system, as another guy I might talk about a bit further up, and things like that. But as she sits down, he goes, oh, look, this person's getting favoured. I'm not getting favoured. And he puts that anger of getting kicked out, not on his medication, can't think straight, and takes it out on that person, right? Which can be a common occurrence. But also, you've got to do research to make sure that that's true. Doesn't mean it's current occurrence. Doesn't mean you can be that place of go, oh, this is common, it's that. Don't have to worry about looking too deep. Research should always be a standard. To get things right, you should make sure that everything's a standard, like an autopsy of suspicious deaths and stuff like that. Deaths should be always researched. Death's death, man. It should be researched more when it comes to police power than a lost person. You see people get lost and they put all this manpower. See, that's what I don't understand. Put all this manpower over here. No wonder they run out of money. Not thinking right in certain areas. Right? Where coppers don't need to be out there, you can actually start getting volunteers and stuff like that, and there's many ways, but they do it. And then some other areas do a little bit of volunteer. But it's just the way they think. And if you do it that way, then it's bound to not get things right. And then they put that file into the file box, right? And that's the sad thing about the police area, is that they get, people don't trust them too much to solve anything because they seem to get more cases not solved than solved, which is sad. But it can be many reasons of that technology and all sorts of other things in certain areas why some have more than others, right? But that's what I believe he did, took out the anger. And so if that's true, like I said, who's really at fault in the end? It's like the parents, the guardian, isn't it? Definitely if it was a pre-occurrence before. If it wasn't, then he can try to claim that he's crazy to get looked after, right? So hopefully he doesn't get off medication. But does it take a death to get to there? It shouldn't. It should just take, if they're on that high medication of these warnings up to that sign, up to that point, they need a guardian, like a slow person needs a guardian. They can't wipe their bum and stuff, right? Until they can prove that they're healed, right? They just need someone watching them. Like overseas, they have women that lost their rights and they've got to have a man around all the time. If they can pull off that, then it shouldn't be too hard to pull off these type of things in that area. And it's sad to hear that he had that issue at the start, right? So in the end, he ends up going to hospital, getting help that way. Still gets time. And the parents of the girl could take their anger out on why he got out, why the dog got out. That mean, vicious dog. You get it? Kind of thing. And that's how you'd probably treat it in that area, if that was true. But anyway, I thought I'd just chuck out some scenarios, as I call them, doorways in a way. Let me know what scenario you believe. And that could help us if we do it right. Think about it, right? You can do scenario to scenario. That can only trigger someone when you say a scenario to someone who's got a badge. But hopefully one day you wouldn't have to say it so much, but if they can do their job, they would need it. But if they can't, well, it becomes some advice and helpful, isn't it?
Back home is facing federal murder charges, and President
So
Trump...
I believe with that, and see if I'm right or not, who knows, we'll have to find out. Maybe we'll never even get the real truth of the propaganda and how things are spoken. But I believe that he did not want to do that. Even if he was a bit crazy, even taking out his anger, I believe that he didn't want to do such a thing at that point. And circumstances come out. No matter, even if it's a gamble bet, he's taking a risk, isn't he? And did he want to take a risk on that person? And why that person? Could have been a lot of other people, right? But anyway, enough of all that. We can go on for ages.
Is calling for the death penalty, writing that DeCarlos Brown should be given a quick trial and only awarded the death penalty. There can be no...
Now, so if I heard what I just heard, and it was true, so you got to check up things, you shouldn't be getting the death penalty unless you find out it's the one scenario where they plan to make it look like he's crazy, right? And if they got the truth of that, and he pretended to be crazy and all that to get an outcome, then perhaps he could get a long-term jail time or life, as he knew what he was doing, and he could have made other choices, and he's not crazy. So he straight out killed someone, right? And some countries can give you death penalty for that. Some countries give you death penalty for fucking drugs. But anyway, sometimes education can fix that area. Definitely if they give you information to help that not happen again, kind of thing. And you should reward for that, and the system should absorb it and hopefully move on. And you can even land by releasing them. And if they've gone through a proper system, release them and see what happens. And hopefully you're all right through a slow release system, right? By having islands offered to death penalty type of people that you call now, where they can go live their lives out after you've drilled them like a Chinese man, if you want, of the ways until they show that they're doing it. See, Chinese people, they force people into cults, and you can either do it or you can pretend to do it, and then you can run away. People have talked about that kind of thing, right? And so that's why I talk about a safe zone would be good for them. That's more harder to get off and needs more rules, has more rules there than other countries and stuff like that, until they learn to get through there, right? And not do things so bad naturally. Could be seen definitely through cameras and stuff like that. Lots of ways to approach it. So I'm glad.
The death penalty. There can be no other option. Court documents show Brown is undergoing a psychiatric evaluation in prison. Brown's sister recording a phone call with her brother after his arrest, where he referred to himself in the third person, telling her,
"Why would somebody just stab somebody for no reason?"
His mother telling...
Why would you say that? Now, if he was in a bet, if he was getting forced to by rich people to do something, someone was threatening his life, things like that, he wants to show the system that he's losing the plot, maybe, and he can use medication to make him... There's lots of ways, but that's an odd thing to say, isn't it? And so you got to ask him and find out the truth of why he would actually say that.
ABC News, she
Pre-warming up the plan, so it looks like something, you know.
him out of her house after he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and refused to take his medication. Brown's criminal history has been cited by many on the right as an example of violent crime plaguing Democratic-led cities. Today, Republican officials in Charlotte spoke out.
This is a result of...
And when he called his sister, he could be calling out for help and giving her a warning if you're mental. Why would someone do something? He's already getting the feeling, but usually if you're crazy, you don't pre-plan, right? But if you can feel crazy when you start to go nasty, right? But you can't really use it unless you really are crazy. It's very hard to diagnose crazy, right? You've got to have a lot of pre-history of it or continuous history of it, right? Which you have to be pretty good at it. You can't heal through it quickly and all these things. So anyhow, let's continue.
Failed policies, weak leadership, and a judicial system that protects criminals instead of innocent individuals.
Yep, that's about right. Instead of innocent people. That's what's happening out here. I can talk about that mostly. But what's he talking about by let's give him death penalties because what? He's a bad guy? But if he's crazy, he's technically not a bad guy, and with medication, he wouldn't have been, and all that kind of stuff. But if it's the other way, he's definitely a bad guy. So it's hard to tell him that. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and have a good one. And no good about all these things like the old lady getting burnt. And usually, why I talked about how it could be a cult joining thing, knowledge they've learnt to get money, to get recognised, which is a high probability. You might find if you check out all their information, then it might lead to a similar area that can lead to another similar area of why they're doing what they're doing. And if someone's crying out for help, usually they'll give you a message like that guy did before. It might mean something. See you later.